The rich do not think about money more than you do. They think about it differently. And that difference is not a personality trait. It is not confidence, or fearlessness, or some inherited quality that arrived with the family name. It is a set of rules. Specific, learnable, repeatable rules that govern how money is perceived, how decisions are made, how risk is evaluated, how identity relates to income, and how the future is weighted against the present. Most people were never taught these rules, not because the rules were hidden, but because the people who follow them do not tend to explain them. They tend to live them, quietly, without commentary. And the results accumulate in silence until the silence becomes undeniable. You were taught a different set of rules. Rules designed, whether intentionally or not, to produce a specific relationship with money. One built on scarcity thinking, reactive decision-making, short time horizons, and the belief that financial outcomes are primarily determined by income level. They are not. Financial outcomes are primarily determined by the rules operating inside the person managing the income. Change the rules, and the outcomes change. Not immediately, not dramatically in the first month, but structurally, at the level of how every financial decision is made. And structurally is the only level that compounds. This script contains 7 new rules, not aspirational principles, not motivational reframes. Behavioral rules. The kind that, once internalized, change what you notice, what you choose, and what you build. Without requiring daily renewal of motivation to maintain. The 7 rules are: the scarcity override, the time horizon shift, the invisible price tag, the asymmetric lens, the identity anchor, the quiet reinvestment rule, and the closed comparison loop. Each rule ends with one action. Specific, small, and scheduled. You do not need to adopt all 7 this week. You need to understand one deeply enough that it begins filtering your decisions. One rule, operating at the level of reflex, changes more than 7 rules understood intellectually. Let us begin. Rule 1. The scarcity override. Most people make financial decisions from scarcity, not because they are poor, because they were trained to. The first rule is the scarcity override. Scarcity thinking is not a response to low income. It is a psychological operating system, a default filter through which financial information is processed. That was installed early, reinforced constantly, and rarely examined. It sounds like this: there is not enough. There will not be enough. Every financial decision is a potential threat to what little stability exists. And that operating system, running quietly beneath every money-related thought, produces a specific set of behaviors. It produces hoarding disguised as saving. It produces avoidance disguised as caution. It produces paralysis disguised as responsibility. And it produces, most damagingly, a persistent inability to see opportunity. Because the scarcity filter is designed to identify threat, not possibility. The mind running on scarcity does not scan the financial environment for what could be built. It scans for what could be lost. And what you scan for, you find. What you find, you respond to. And the responses accumulated over years produce a financial life organized around the prevention of loss, rather than the construction of gain. William Walker Atkinson described this psychological mechanism in 1906 as poverty consciousness. His observation was not moral, it was clinical. The person operating from poverty consciousness, regardless of their income level, makes decisions that are consistent with scarcity, and those decisions, compounded over time, produce outcomes that confirm the original belief. The belief creates the behavior. The behavior creates the outcome. The outcome confirms the belief. The loop is closed, and it runs without interruption, until a deliberate, specific override is installed. The scarcity override is not positive thinking. It is not the instruction to believe that everything will work out. It is a specific cognitive intervention. Before any significant financial decision is made, the question asked is not, "What could I lose here?" The question asked is, What does this produce? Not instead of the loss question. After it, the loss question is legitimate. Risk is real. But in the mind running on scarcity, the loss question is the only question. It crowds out the production question entirely. The override installs the second question as mandatory. What does this produce? What is the mechanism of return? What does this position look like in 5 years if the fundamental premise holds? Those questions do not eliminate caution. They balance it with the kind of thinking that the financially successful use as their primary filter, and that the financially constrained use rarely or never. In practice, scarcity thinking is most visible in 3 specific financial behaviors. The first is decision avoidance. The scarcity mind delays financial decisions indefinitely, because every decision carries potential loss, and no decision feels safe. The delay is experienced as prudence. It is actually a loss in itself, compounding quietly through inaction. The second is complexity aversion. The scarcity mind avoids anything that requires learning a new financial concept, because the discomfort of unfamiliarity registers as threat, and threat in the scarcity system triggers avoidance. The result is a financial life organized around familiar instruments, regardless of whether those instruments are producing adequately. The third is present bias. The scarcity mind weights immediate financial relief far more heavily than future financial position. The decision that saves $20 today and costs $200 in compounding over 5 years feels like the right decision to the scarcity mind, because the $20 is real and present, and the $200 is abstract and distant. The override corrects present bias by making the future concrete, not through visualization, but through calculation. When a financial decision is being made, the override asks, what does this cost in 5 years, not today? And the answer, stated plainly, changes the weight of the decision. Your one action this week: identify one financial decision you have been avoiding, not indefinitely deferring for strategic reasons. Avoiding because the prospect of making it activates discomfort. Name the decision. Write down the loss question you have been asking about it. Then write down the production question. What does acting on this produce? What does continuing to avoid it cost? In compounding terms, over 5 years? Let both answers exist on the same page. The override is not the instruction to proceed. It is the instruction to ask both questions. Before deciding which answer should govern, you may object that caution is rational, that the losses are real, and that optimism about production is not a substitute for honest risk assessment. That objection is correct. The override is not optimism. It is completeness. Scarcity thinking is incomplete thinking applied to financial decisions. The override completes it. Nothing more, nothing less. The scarcity loop runs on a single question. Install the second question, and the loop begins to open. Rule 2, the time horizon shift. 2 people look at the same financial opportunity. One sees a 5-year position. The other sees a 5-month position. They are not looking at the same thing. The second rule is the time horizon shift. The single most consistent behavioral difference between people who build lasting wealth and people who remain in financial cycles that reset every few years is not income, not intelligence, not access to better opportunities. It is time horizon. The financially successful operate from a longer time horizon as a default, not as a strategy applied to specific decisions, but as the ambient frame through which all financial information is processed. They ask about every significant financial choice. What does this look like in 10 years? Not as an afterthought, as the first question. The financially struggling operate from a shorter time horizon as a default, not from laziness or short-sightedness, but because the immediate financial pressure they live under makes the present feel more real than the future. And when the present feels more real than the future, decisions optimize for the present, regardless of what that optimization costs the future. This is not a character flaw. It is a predictable response to sustained financial pressure. But it is also a correctable one, because the time horizon is not fixed. It is a setting. And settings can be changed. Ralph Waldo Trine observed in 1912 that the financially successful man thinks 10 years ahead as naturally as the struggling man thinks 10 days ahead. His point was not that the successful man was more patient by nature. It was that his circumstances had trained a longer horizon. And that horizon, once trained, became the default through which every decision passed. The correction for someone whose horizon has been compressed by pressure is to artificially extend it, deliberately, until the extension becomes habitual. In practice, the time horizon shift requires one structural change. Every financial decision above a defined threshold receives a mandatory 10-year question before it is finalized. Not a fantasy about the future. A specific, grounded question. If this decision is made today, and the conditions I expect hold reasonably well, what is the realistic state of this position in 10 years? And the inverse. If this decision is not made today, and I continue the current pattern, what is the realistic state of this position in 10 years? Both questions. Every significant decision. Before finalization. The threshold can be any amount that feels significant to your current situation. The specific number is less important than the habit of applying the question consistently, because the habit, repeated enough, begins to extend the horizon automatically. The 10-year question starts as a deliberate tool. It ends as a default filter. And a default filter operating at a 10-year horizon produces a categorically different financial life than a default filter operating at 10 days. Your one action this week. Choose one financial habit you currently maintain without examining it. Something automatic. Something you do every month without questioning it. Apply the 10-year question to it. If this habit continues unchanged for 10 years, what is its realistic financial consequence? Write the answer. Not an estimate. A calculation. What does this habit produce? Or cost? Across 10 years? The answer may confirm that the habit is sound. Or it may reveal a compounding cost that the short horizon made invisible. Either way, the question has been asked. And a question asked honestly cannot be fully unheard. You may object that 10-year thinking is a luxury. That people under immediate financial pressure cannot afford to think long-term. Because the short-term must be survived before the long-term becomes relevant. There is partial truth in that. Immediate survival is real. But the time horizon shift does not require ignoring the present. It requires adding the future to every significant present decision as a mandatory consideration, not a replacement for immediate needs. The person who manages the present while also asking the 10-year question makes different present decisions than the person who manages the present alone. Not reckless decisions. Not impractical ones. Different ones. Ones that cost the same today, but compound differently over a decade. The horizon is the lens. Shift the lens. The view changes, and the decisions made from the new view accumulate differently. One decision that compounds. Deciding to ask the 10-year question before every significant financial choice is the decision. It costs nothing. It changes everything it touches. Rule 3, the invisible price tag. Every financial decision has 2 price tags. Most people only read one. The third rule is the invisible price tag. The visible price tag is the number on the transaction. The amount spent, invested, saved, or redirected. Most financial decisions are made by reading that number, comparing it to available resources, and deciding whether the visible cost is acceptable. The invisible price tag is the compounding cost of that decision across time. It is not printed anywhere. It does not appear on the receipt. It does not show up in the account until years later, when the decision is long forgotten, and the cost has accumulated to an amount that cannot be traced back to its origin. But it is real. And in most cases, the invisible price tag is larger than the visible one, sometimes dramatically larger. The person who spends $100 on something that produced no return did not spend $100. They spent $100 plus the compounding return that $100 would have produced over the remaining years of their productive financial life, at a modest compounding rate. That invisible tag can be several times the visible one, at a higher rate, across a longer period. It can be an order of magnitude larger. The financially successful read both tags, not obsessively, not in a way that makes ordinary spending feel like financial catastrophe, but for significant, recurring, and strategic financial decisions. They read the invisible tag before they read the visible one, because the invisible tag is the honest price. The visible tag is just the entry fee. Orison Swett Martin described this as the hidden arithmetic of wealth in 1908. His observation was that the financially successful seemed to calculate differently than those around them, not because they were better at mathematics, but because they were calculating a different number. They were calculating what a financial decision would cost them in 10 years, not what it would cost them today. And that number, the invisible one, was the one that governed the decision. In modern terms, the invisible price tag applies most powerfully to three categories of decision. The first category is recurring expenses. A recurring expense is not its monthly cost. It is its monthly cost multiplied by the number of months it will continue, plus the compounding opportunity cost of that total amount, deployed instead into a productive position. When a recurring expense is evaluated on its monthly cost alone, it appears manageable. When it is evaluated on its true compounding multi-year cost, its character changes completely. The second category is income decisions. Accepting a role, a rate, or a position at a specific income level is not a decision about this year's income. It is a decision about the compounding trajectory of income over the next decade. Because income level at one point tends to anchor income expectations at the next. And anchors in financial life are expensive. The invisible price tag on an income decision is the compounding gap between the accepted rate and the achievable rate. Multiplied across the years that gap persists. That number is almost never calculated at the moment of decision. It should be. The third category is delay. The invisible price tag of waiting 1 year before beginning a compounding position is not 1 year of return. It is 1 year of return, plus the compounding of that return, plus the compounding of the compounding, across the entire remaining horizon. The first year of a compounding position is the most expensive year to miss, because it is the year that initiates every subsequent cycle. The invisible price tag on a 1-year delay is every cycle that delay postponed. Your one action this week: identify one significant recurring expense in your financial life. Calculate its true cost, not monthly, but across 5 years. Then calculate the compounding value of that same amount, deployed instead into a productive position at a modest, honest rate. Write both numbers on the same page. Let the invisible tag become visible. The decision about what to do with that information is yours, but the information itself, seen clearly, is no longer invisible, and invisible costs can only be managed once they are seen. You may object that this kind of calculation makes every spending decision feel weighted with anxiety, and that a life spent calculating invisible price tags is not a life. It is an accounting exercise. The response is precision, not anxiety. The invisible price tag exercise is not applied to every coffee or every meal. It is applied to significant, recurring, and strategic decisions. The category of decisions where the invisible tag is large enough to govern the outcome. For small, ordinary daily spending, the visible tag is sufficient. For the decisions that compound, the invisible tag is the honest price. Read it, then decide. Rule 4, the asymmetric lens. The rich do not take more risk than you. They take different risk. Specifically, they take risk where the structure is asymmetric in their favor. The fourth rule is the asymmetric lens. Asymmetric risk means the outcomes are unequal in a specific direction. The downside is defined, limited, and survivable. The upside is open, compounding, and potentially transformative. This is the structure the financially successful seek in every significant deployment. Not the elimination of risk, which is impossible, but the deliberate selection of risk structures where the mathematics favor the holder. Most people, when they think about financial risk, think symmetrically. They imagine that risk means an equal chance of gain or loss, and that the appropriate response to risk is either to accept it fully or avoid it entirely. That framing produces two equally poor outcomes: people who avoid all significant financial risk, and therefore avoid all significant financial growth, and people who accept risk indiscriminately, without evaluating its structure, and lose capital in positions where the downside was open and the upside was limited. Neither group is thinking about structure. The financially successful think about nothing else. Before any significant deployment, the question they ask is not, "Is this risky?" The question is, "What is the structure of this risk?" If the worst case is defined and survivable, and the best case is open and compounding, the structure is asymmetric in their favor. That is the risk they take. If the worst case is open and potentially catastrophic, and the best case is fixed and limited, the structure is asymmetric against them. That is the risk they decline, regardless of how confident the reasoning sounds, regardless of how many other people are taking it, regardless of how certain the outcome appears in the moment. The structure governs, not the confidence. Frank Channing Haddock described this behavioral discipline in 1907 as the arithmetic of the capable man. His observation was that the financially capable did not avoid loss by being lucky. They avoided catastrophic loss by refusing to enter positions where catastrophic loss was structurally possible. And they produced significant gain by consistently entering positions where significant gain was structurally available, even when those positions were uncertain, even when the timeline was unclear, because the structure, not the certainty, was the criterion. In practice, the asymmetric lens is applied through three questions asked before any significant financial deployment. First, what is the defined worst case? Not the feared worst case, not the catastrophic imagination. The defined, realistic, structurally bounded worst case. If the worst case cannot be defined, the structure is open on the downside. That is a disqualifying condition. Second, is that worst case survivable without structural damage to the overall financial position? Not comfortable, not painless, survivable, meaning the position can be lost entirely and the architecture of the financial life continues to function. If the answer is no, the position is too large for the current architecture. Reduce it until the worst case becomes survivable. Third, what is the mechanism of the upside? And is it open or fixed? A fixed upside, a defined capped return, is a position where the asymmetry may not favor the holder. An open upside, a return that grows with the quality of the underlying activity, is a position where the asymmetry is structurally available. These three questions, applied consistently, do not eliminate uncertainty. They ensure that the uncertainty is structured in the holder's favor. And structured uncertainty, maintained across many positions over many years, produces a very different outcome than unstructured uncertainty, even when the individual results are mixed. Your one action this week: review one significant financial position you currently hold or are considering. Apply the three questions. Is the worst case defined? Is it survivable? Is the upside open or fixed? Write the answers plainly. If the position passes all three tests, it has an asymmetric structure. If it fails any of them, the structure deserves reconsideration before more capital is committed. You may object that asymmetric positions are rare, that most available financial opportunities are either low risk, low return or high risk, high return, and that the asymmetric structure is an idealization that does not exist in practice. That objection reflects the perspective of someone looking in the wrong places. Asymmetric structures exist most abundantly not in financial products, but in skill development, system construction, and the deployment of genuinely rare capability into genuine demand. These are positions where the downside is limited to time and attention, and the upside is open and compounding. They are not exotic. They are the most accessible asymmetric positions available to most people, and they are consistently overlooked, in favor of financial product positions where the asymmetry is far less favorable. Look for the structure. not the product. The structure is the rule. Counterintuitive truth ahead. The most asymmetric position available to most people is not in the market. It is in themselves. The downside of investing in genuine skill development is defined and small. The upside is open and compounding. That is the structure. And the structure is the only criterion that matters. Rule 5, the identity anchor. The financially successful do not manage their money. They manage their identity. And their money follows. The 5th rule is the identity anchor. Every financial decision passes through an identity filter before it is made. In most people, that filter operates unconsciously. Shaped by early experience, cultural messaging, and the financial behaviors of the people they grew up watching. It produces decisions that are consistent with a specific financial identity, one that was never chosen, never examined, and never updated. The financially successful have, at some point, made the identity filter conscious. They have examined it, updated it, and anchored it to a specific, chosen description of the financial actor they are. And that anchor governs, not their income, not their market conditions, not their economic environment, their anchor. Because the anchor determines what decisions feel natural, what behaviors feel consistent, what outcomes feel appropriate, and what financial positions feel like something that someone like them would hold. Wallace Wattles described this in 1910 as the formless substance of financial life. His point, stripped of the metaphysical language he used, was behavioral. The person becomes, in financial terms, what they consistently imagine themselves to be. Not through the power of imagination alone, but through the filter that the imagination installs on every decision, and the compounding of decisions made through that filter over time. Change the imagination, and the filter changes. Change the filter, and the decisions change. Change the decisions, and the outcomes change. Not immediately, not visibly in the first month, but structurally, in the way that structural changes always manifest. Slowly at first, then undeniably. The identity anchor is specific in its construction. It is not a vision board. It is not a general aspiration toward wealth. It is a precise, behavioral description of the financial actor you are choosing to become. Written in the present tense. Specific enough to filter decisions. And private enough to be built without an audience. In practice, the anchor is a single sentence, beginning with, "I am the kind of person who," completed with a specific financial behavior that is true of the person you are becoming, not the person you currently are, and not the person you are performing for others, the person you are in the process of becoming. That sentence, read daily and acted on consistently, installs the filter. And the filter, once installed, operates quietly on every financial decision that passes through it, producing behavior that is consistent with the anchor. Without requiring conscious deliberation each time, the anchor becomes automatic. An automatic behavior, aligned with a builder's identity, is the mechanism behind every financial outcome that looks, from the outside, like discipline. From the inside, it is not discipline. It is identity. Discipline requires daily renewal. Identity does not. Your one action this week: write the anchor sentence. One sentence. Present tense. Specific to a financial behavior. Not, "I am someone who is good with money." Too vague to filter decisions. Specific, "I am the kind of person who deploys capital before I spend what remains." Or, "I am the kind of person who evaluates every significant financial decision against a 10-year horizon." Or, "I am the kind of person who keeps the portion without exception." In every month, regardless of pressure. One sentence. Written. Read every morning this week. Tell no one. The anchor is built in private. The results are what eventually become visible. You may object that this sounds like affirmation, and that affirmations produce feeling without result. The distinction is this: an affirmation is a statement about a desired state. An identity anchor is a behavioral filter, specific enough to change what choices are made at the decision point, and reinforced by making at least one decision each day that is consistent with it. The sentence is not the mechanism. The daily decision that confirms the sentence is the mechanism. The sentence is the anchor. The decisions are what the anchor holds. Write the sentence. Make the decision. Repeat. The filter installs itself through use. Rule 6. The quiet reinvestment rule. The financially successful do not spend their returns. They reinvest them. Not occasionally. Not when the returns are large enough to make reinvestment feel significant. Every time. By default. Without deliberation. The sixth rule is the quiet reinvestment rule. Reinvestment is the mechanism that turns a single compounding cycle into a closed loop. Without it, the cycle produces return. The return is consumed. And the next cycle begins from the same base as the last. Linear growth. Respectable. Insufficient. With it, the cycle produces return. The return is added to the base. And the next cycle begins from a larger position. Compounding growth. Quiet. Transformative across a long enough horizon. The difference between these two outcomes is not the rate of return. It is not the quality of the investment. It is not the sophistication of the strategy. It is one behavioral decision made by default every time a return is produced. Does this return go back into the position? Or does it go into consumption? The financially successful have made that decision in advance. It goes back, always, by default. Not because they deprive themselves of the enjoyment of their returns, but because they have separated their consumption income from their compounding income. And they do not allow the compounding stream to be redirected into the consumption stream. The consumption stream is funded by active income. The compounding stream feeds itself. That separation is the rule. And the rule, maintained without exception, is what produces the outcomes that look exceptional from the outside. Klassen described this in 1925 as the flock that grows because the lambs are kept. The lambs are the returns. Keeping them is the rule. Selling them for immediate consumption is the most common and most costly violation of compounding available. In modern terms, the quiet reinvestment rule requires two structural decisions. The first is the separation of streams. Active income funds lifestyle. Investment return funds the next cycle. These are not the same stream. They do not flow into the same account. They do not get evaluated against the same set of spending priorities. The separation is structural, not aspirational. The second is the default setting. When a return is produced, the default is reinvestment, not consumption. Consumption from returns requires a deliberate, conscious decision to override the default. The override is available. Life is real. Needs exist. But the override is the exception, not the rule. And when the override is the exception rather than the default, the compounding continues in every month where no override is needed, which in most months is every month. Your one action this week. Identify one position in your financial life that is currently producing return. It may be small. The size is not the point. Confirm that the return is being reinvested into the position, or into a productive adjacent position, rather than being absorbed into the consumption stream. If it is being absorbed into consumption, create a separate destination for that return this week. A dedicated account, a named position, somewhere the return goes that is not the spending account, even if the amount is modest. The architecture matters more than the amount, because the architecture scales. The amount follows the architecture. You may object that your returns are currently too small to matter, that reinvesting them makes no practical difference to the base. That objection contains the same error as waiting for the flock to be larger before placing it in productive pasture. The reinvestment habit is more valuable than the reinvestment amount in the early stages, because the habit, established now, persists as the amounts grow. And the amounts, given enough time in a compounding structure, do grow. The habit must exist before the amounts are significant, or the significant amounts will be consumed the same way the small ones were. Reinvest the small returns. The practice prepares you for the large ones. Most people stop here. This is where you begin. Rule 7. The closed comparison loop. The most expensive financial habit most people have. is one that costs nothing in the moment and everything over time. It is comparison. The seventh rule is the closed comparison loop. Comparison is not vanity. It is not a character flaw. It is a deeply embedded cognitive mechanism, one that evolved to help assess social standing and relative safety, and that, in the context of modern financial life, produces almost exclusively destructive outcomes. Because financial comparison does not produce information that improves your position. It produces emotion that distorts your decisions. When you observe someone whose financial position appears more advanced than yours, the comparison does not generate useful strategic data. It generates a feeling of deficit, of falling behind, of urgency, that bypasses the rational decision-making system entirely, and produces financial decisions designed to close the perceived gap, not to build toward the actual goal. Those decisions are almost always wrong. They are wrong in timing, in scale, in risk structure, because they are made from emotion rather than strategy. And wrong financial decisions made from comparison produce outcomes that create more material for future comparison, which produces more emotional deficit, which produces more wrong decisions. The loop is closed, and it is closed against you. The closed comparison loop is the instruction to close it deliberately, permanently, from the inside. Not by pretending other people's financial lives do not exist, not by avoiding information about the broader financial environment, but by removing comparison from the decision-making process entirely, by making your financial benchmark entirely internal, and by defining progress exclusively in relation to your own prior position, never in relation to anyone else's current one. The financially successful are, almost without exception, comparison closed, not because they are unaware of what others have built, but because they long ago recognized that comparison is a consumption of the exact cognitive resource that building requires. And they close the loop to protect the resource. In practice, closing the loop requires one behavioral rule. The only financial benchmark that governs your decisions is your own prior position. Are you ahead of where you were 1 year ago? Is your architecture more sound than it was 12 months ago? Is the portion larger, the wall stronger, the flock better placed than it was at this time last year? Those are the only questions that produce useful information. The question of how you compare to someone else produces only emotional noise, at the expense of the focused attention that construction requires. Your one action this week: identify one source of financial comparison in your current life. Not all of them. One. The one that most reliably produces the feeling of deficit or urgency. Remove it for 30 days. Not permanently. 30 days. And in those 30 days, observe what happens to the quality of your financial decisions. In the absence of the comparison noise, the observation will be instructive in a way that no principle stated abstractly can replicate, because you will feel the difference between decisions made from your own position and decisions made in reaction to someone else's. And that difference, felt clearly, is hard to unfeel. You may object that awareness of what others have built is motivating, that comparison can drive aspiration, and that closing it removes useful fuel. There is a version of that which is partially true. Observing what is possible, what has been built by people starting from comparable positions, is not the same as comparing your current state to their current state. Possibility awareness is useful. Present state comparison is not. The difference is the direction of the reference. Looking at what has been done to understand what is possible is information. Looking at where someone else is now to evaluate where you are is noise. Close the noise. Keep the information. The loop runs on noise. Remove the noise. The loop closes, and the attention it was consuming returns to you, compoundingly. Diagnostic interlude. Pause here. 7 rules. Before the close. An honest audit, not a judgment, a diagnostic. Ask yourself these questions, and sit with each answer plainly. First, am I currently making financial decisions from the scarcity question alone? Or am I consistently asking the production question alongside it? Second, is my default time horizon measured in months, or in years? And do I apply the 10-year question to significant decisions before they are finalized? Third, am I reading the invisible price tag on recurring, strategic, and income-level decisions? Or am I evaluating them only on their visible, immediate cost? Fourth, do I evaluate financial risk by its structure? Asymmetric in my favor or against me? Or do I evaluate it only by the general category of risky or safe? Fifth, do I have a written identity anchor that filters my financial decisions? Or am I operating from an unconscious filter installed by someone else's financial story? Sixth, are my returns being reinvested by default in a structurally separate stream? Or are they being absorbed into consumption without deliberate decision? Seventh, is there an open comparison loop running in my financial life, consuming attention that could be building something? You do not need to have answered all 7 correctly. You need to have answered them honestly, because the one that produced the most discomfort is almost certainly the one with the most to offer. That is the rule to begin with, not the easiest one, the most uncomfortable one. This part is uncomfortable. Good. It means you are early. 7 rules. Not personality traits. Not inherited advantages. Not the exclusive property of a particular income level. Behavioral rules. Learnable, installable, and compounding once installed. Here is what you now carry. The scarcity override teaches that the financially successful ask 2 questions where most people ask 1. And that the second question, what does this produce, is the one that changes what gets built. The time horizon shift teaches that the horizon is a setting, not a personality trait, and that shifting it deliberately to 10 years changes every significant financial decision that passes through it. The invisible price tag teaches that every financial decision has a compounding cost that does not appear on the receipt, and that the honest price of any significant decision is the invisible tag, not the visible one. The asymmetric lens teaches that the financially successful do not take more risk. They take structured risk, and the structure they seek is defined downside with open upside. Every time, without exception. The identity anchor teaches that financial behavior follows financial identity, and that a chosen, written, daily reinforced anchor changes the filter through which every decision passes, without requiring discipline to maintain. The quiet reinvestment rule teaches that compounding requires reinvestment by default, that the separation of consumption and compounding streams is structural, and that the habit of reinvestment must be established before the amounts are significant. The closed comparison loop teaches that financial comparison produces emotional noise at the cost of construction attention, and that closing the loop returns a compounding resource that no income increase can replicate. Your 3-sentence recap. The rich do not think about money more than you do. They think about it through different rules. And the rules are the difference between a financial life that resets and one that compounds. None of these rules require more income to install. They require a different architecture. And architecture is available to anyone willing to examine what is currently running and replace it deliberately. You do not need all 7 rules operating perfectly this week. You need 1 rule installed completely, at the level of reflex. And the rest will follow as the first one proves itself. The next part of this series addresses the rule most people find hardest to install. Not because it is the most complex, but because it requires dismantling something that currently feels like protection. Stay close.